Good morning. It's February 19th, and this is the TLO Morning Update. I'm Diane Sayre, filling in for Harley Schlanger today, Wednesday. So obviously, or it should be obvious, that the big news is what's happening in Riyadh, where you had the meeting of the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio with his Russian counterpart. And I'm just going to read to you the write-up of this, what Rubio had to say, and then what the Russians had to say. And I think you can see why the Europeans are rending their garments, gnashing their teeth. I mean, Western Europeans, as in the Paris War Conference, as Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban called it, in reaction to the fact that the United States and Russia are seeking to normalize our relations, which have been in tatters really since the Obama administration. And remember, it was Obama and Biden, then as vice president, who presided over the regime change spectacle in Ukraine, putting the neo-Nazi elements into power there and leading to the current situation. So according to the spokesperson for the State Department, Tammy Bruce, what Rubio and Lavrov agreed to is establish a consultation mechanism to address irritants to our bilateral relationship, with the objective of taking steps necessary to normalize the operation of our respective diplomatic missions, to appoint respective high-level teams to begin working on a path to ending the conflict in Ukraine as soon as possible, in a way that is enduring, sustainable, and acceptable to all sides. Lay the groundwork for future cooperation on matters of mutual geopolitical and historical and economic interests. And finally, the parties to today's meetings pledge to remain engaged and to make sure the process moves forward in a timely and productive manner. Now, the Russian readout gives a little more specific information on some areas. They say the sides agreed to appoint respective ambassadors as soon as possible and to start consultations at the level of deputy foreign ministers to remove restrictions on activities out of the diplomatic missions of the two countries. The sides agreed to establish a dialogue to identify ways to resume cooperation in the economy, including energy, outer space exploration, that's excellent, and other areas of mutual interest. On Ukraine, the Russian side emphasized the importance of eliminating the root causes of the conflict, creating proper conditions for achieving lasting and enduring peace, and ensuring security and legitimate interests of all countries in the region. An agreement was reached to continue joint work in this area through special envoys to be appointed in the near future, and the interest in continuing to prepare the meeting between the Russian and American presidents. So this is, of course, very promising. It's a major, major step. Now, as far as the howling Western Europeans who already lied and sabotaged the Minsk process, the Russian representative to the United Nations, Ambassador Nebenzia, had the following to say on why the Europeans are not invited to the meetings between the Russians and the Americans. He said the Western Europeans, quote, are blinded by primordial Russophobia, a maniacal desire to defeat our country on the battlefield, using to this end those Ukrainians who are left alive. There aren't that many Ukrainian men left alive. It's estimated that 800,000 to 1 million Ukrainian men have been killed in this conflict, used by people like Senator Lindsey Graham, who said the war was cheap because Americans aren't dying and they're working to produce the weapons. Nebenzia continued, today's European elites are unfortunately incapable of thinking strategically and can hardly even imagine any security formulas involving Russia, since for many years they have been shaping covertly or overtly exclusively anti-Russian political and military configurations. We do not know how long it will take to heal their minds. And then he goes on to talk about the issue of Nazism infesting the Zelensky government. Remember, 2025 is the 80th anniversary of the defeat of the Nazis, VE Day, World War II, May of 1945. It's the 80-year anniversary. It's a big deal. It's something we should still be celebrating in the United States, but under Biden and Obama, we did not. He said that the Europeans armed the Ukrainian government that prevented, quote, education in the Russian language, the opportunity to practice canonical orthodoxy, and the right to honor those heroes who liberated Ukraine from Nazism, rather than those criminals who, alongside the Hitlerites, exterminated hundreds of thousands of Jews, Poles, Russians, Roma, and some Ukrainians. People should have the right not to honor those who are worshipped in Ukraine today, with Bandera at the top of the list, unquote. So Nebenzia particularly forceful and hard-hitting at the United Nations. Now, our Secretary of State Rubio also met with Mohammed bin Salman in Saudi Arabia, and this they did not reach agreements, clearly, because Rubio probably is representing the quite delusional plan that Trump expressed in his meeting with Netanyahu, that all the Palestinians are going to leave Gaza and we're going to turn it into an American-run resort. Not happening. So the readout on that simply says they exchanged views. Still very important. These talks are very important, and I'm hopeful that the Trump administration is going to get a sense of reality that this proposal simply will not happen. The Palestinians aren't leaving, and the surrounding Arab nations are not going to participate in making them leave by accepting them. And this area is going to have to be rebuilt with the Palestinians living in it. And some of us from the LaRouche organization will be visiting Washington, D.C. Today to join with Doctors Against Genocide to take this matter up. Also, on the 17th of February, there was a meeting in Egypt where Philippe Lazzarini of UNRWA and the Egyptian foreign minister and 35 nations discussed the humanitarian situation, the reconstruction needs there, and again reiterated that the Palestinians are not leaving. Now, I wanted to show you something because I think people want our nation to be unified. And when you have a just policy, a good policy, namely ending the slaughter of the people of Ukraine in a proxy war to, quote unquote, destroy Russia, which never should have been a mission of the United States, Americans are unhappy about this, whatever party, whatever their background. Look at this. I think you're going to be quite amazed. Here you have something, the Progressive Democrats of America, and what do they have to say? Well, there's a group in the Progressive Democrats of America called the End Wars Working Group of the Progressive Democrats, and they say, support a negotiated solution to the war in Ukraine. Although the End Wars Working Group of the Progressive Democrats of America denounces Trump's call to ethnically cleanse Gaza, further militarize our border, and declare war on immigrant and trans communities, we support a dialogue with Russia to end the killing in Ukraine, cut the military budget, and reduce the risk of nuclear war. We urge you, our elected Democrats, to set aside party politics and endorse a negotiated settlement, ceasefire, and end to weapons for Ukraine. Congress has approved almost $200 billion for the war in Ukraine, while 60% of people in our country live paycheck to paycheck. Almost 50% are food insecure. The homeless sleep under freeways, and more of us are on the run as climate catastrophes, fires, floods, hurricanes ravage communities that lack adequate emergency services. Unfortunately, the Democratic Party has become the war party, with Congress members and candidates backing more weapons for Ukraine, Israel's genocide in Gaza, NATO expansion, and the U.S. as the most lethal fighting force in the world. And I'm going to skip a bunch of this. And again, they say, while we oppose Trump's disastrous position on Gaza and his lack of concern for the plight of the Palestinian people, we agree with his statements about the need to end the killing in Ukraine. We urge you, as our elected Democrats, to refrain from condemning this initiative and instead show your support for, as some of you correctly stated over 2 years ago, quote, vigorous diplomatic efforts in support of a negotiated settlement and ceasefire. Democrats wake up, become the party of the peacemakers, not warmongers. Sincerely, Jim Carpenter, co-chair of the End Wars Working Group of the Progressive Democrats of America, Mike Caggiana, co-chair of the same. So there you have it, the Progressive Democrats telling the members of the Democratic Party in Congress, while we may disagree with Trump on Gaza and many other issues, he's right on Ukraine, and we are urging you to support him in ending this war. And I think that demonstrates how, with a correct policy, Americans can come together as we so badly want to do. Finally, I will just say that given the dynamic in the country, the hysteria sweeping the ranks of the FBI and USAID and all kinds of people who've been doing, frankly, really horrible things, quitting or being fired, I think we have an opportunity at long last to secure the exoneration of America's greatest statesman, Lyndon LaRouche. And I hope you will avail yourself of LaRouche's writings, the Sunday morning program at 10 a.m. to familiarize yourself with this great American genius. And that's the update for today, February 19th.